Politicians don't understand people who do good simply because it's right. It makes them nervous.
Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents KyleSeraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in KyleSeraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called KyleSeraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the KyleSeraphin Show.
KyleSeraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent KyleSeraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the KyleSeraphin Show. Today is Friday. It's a friendly Friday, and Steve Friend will be joining us momentarily. I've got him on the line, and he's just sitting there waiting patiently. He's a good guy. We've got some Steve stuff. We actually have a Steve-based palate cleanser for you guys to go into your weekend. I think we're going to have a good time today, so I hope that you stay with us. Let's get started right away. I'm going to tell you where we're going with this because this is going to be a weird day. We're going to be talking about pedophiles. Why not? We're going to be talking about Kamala Harris and the attacks that are on her and how unfounded they are. Of course, that is not related to the pedophile comment at all, not even a little bit. Then we're going to get into how Trump is very mean because that's what has to be covered. I'm just going through the kind of the major topics right now. Trans athletes actually have been discriminated against for a very long time. Some of you are being mean to this dude who may or may not be intersex or have some sort of hormonal issue that makes him like a man that punches out women. So we're going to talk about that. That actually goes back to the Nazi days. So 1930s Germany was also really mean to trans people. So that's the company that you keep. We'll get into that too. Let's see what else we got. U.S. economy is slowing. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well because that's where the issue should be, but that's not what it's about. And of course, nobody seems to be, at least on the political left, talking about the fact that Lebanon and Israel have gotten themselves into a shooting war. So that's always great. And just only the right-wing Twitter sphere is the ones that are covering down that. I'll show you some footage from it. I'll tell you why I think they're not talking about it. We'll ask Steve Friend. Hopefully he's coming in fiery and weird as he was last Friday because he came in and left me in stitches. So hope you guys are looking forward to that. Before we get started, let's do a serious thing. We'll say thanks to my friends over at the Catholic Vote. If you guys want to support Catholic Vote, you can go to catholicvote.org/give. They are in the fight for faith, family, and freedom. They are our friends. And we just dropped a Between the Lines, the last Between the Lines before we take on the new skin. We hatch out of the what do you call those things? Cocoons and become a butterfly. That will be something new you will see very soon. But we've been playing around with that. Anyway, it was a transitional thing in the first place. And so we will be looking into the future and we'll imagine what can be unburdened by what has been. If you guys have seen the BTL already, then you've seen it. I'll just throw this up on the screen as well. Since we did it yesterday, Donald Trump tweeted this out day before yesterday. Catholic Vote's doing great work, getting voters to the polls. All Catholics should join this incredible cause. Crazy Kamala is anti-Catholic. There's a little bit more about that actually going on in the loop today. If you want to read about that, the fact that they're going after them for not protecting churches under the FACE Act. She nominated a judicial nominee, and attacked him for being a member of the Knights of Columbus, and so on. In God we trust, not in government. That would be a nice thing for once. Where's that guy, Steve Friend? Do we have him? There he is. Hey, Steve.
Good morning, sir.
How was your
pleasure to be here on a friendly Friday. I do look forward to this segment. And as much craziness has gone on, I think we overlooked the biggest news of the week, which was that Johnny Cash is now going to have a statue in the United States Capitol, signed off on by all congressional leadership. And ground beef is $4.50 a pound. So we have our priorities in the right place.
I read your tweet the other day. You guys don't understand how sophisticated Steve's humor is, probably. Probably most of you don't really get it. Every single thing you do comes in out of left field. Like no one sees it coming. It's very difficult to defend against a Steve Friend because you're like, aren't you guys excited? Johnny Cash is getting a statue. And you're like, everything's really expensive. Beef is too much.
Apex predators come out of the sky when you don't expect it, which is what I endeavor to do with my social media because I don't really understand how it works or how it's supposed to work. I'm just going to go with what my nature is.
It's not triggering the algorithms properly, but it's really funny for me. So thanks for being the guy that does that. It's really good. There's something special about it. So thanks for being that guy. All right. And yes, beef is high. It's not, people are asking if I think they're dumb in the chat. No, I don't think they're dumb. I think that it takes me a second to figure out where Steve's coming from because I'm like, what is the angle? Oh, it's always like, did you ever watch the movie Ronin?
Oh, it's been a while, but yes.
De Niro movie, right?
Yes.
The reason why Ronin was great, like not just a good action movie, it was a great action movie, I think, is because the dialogue was so much higher tier than most action movies. Right? You got De Niro dropping good lines. You got Sean Bean in there. You got some others. But the reason why why it was so cerebral is because they just took a regular action movie and they deleted 2 out of the 3 lines that would be connecting. So everything made you go like, oh, what? And he's like, you ever kill anybody? And he was like, hurt a guy's feelings once. And you're like, oh, there was like a step there. Yeah. He was like, how'd you get here, pal? And he's like, I found this job in the New York Times. And you're going like, wait, huh? Yeah, they just deleted all the regular things. Listening to Steve Friend is kind of like a guy who's deleted. He's kept 2 of the things that he was going to say in a filter, so you don't understand where he just made the leap. Anyhow, there you go. That's what I got.
Humor
Okay.
is being able to entertain yourself and being comfortable with that. That's
knowing.
Always, I like to go back through my timeline and just laugh at myself and realize that it's probably not going to be profitable for me, as is evidenced by the payouts that I get from the X's. But at the same time, we can go out with a laugh.
You'll be able to fill like half a gas tank. Let's get into the story. You started this one. I'm going to give you the access to this story because you're the one who just sent it to me this morning. So we're going to start it off right away. We told you we'd talk about pedophiles, and here they are. Ex-FBI agent, pedophile. This guy was kind of a trip. You want to give people a refresher on this story?
Well, the background of this guy was he was an agent for the FBI. He wound up being accused of sexually assaulting a colleague at knife point, and then he was fired, but not criminally prosecuted or referred by the FBI. I guess they just figured, oh, well, that glitch fixed itself. And then he lied when he applied to be a state trooper, I believe in Alabama. And then from that position, continued to victimize now children, multiple children sexually, and now has been convicted and is going to be going to the pokey for a long time. The FBI is still sitting in the background. There's multiple failures here during the vetting process. He was able to forge his records from the FBI. There was not really follow-up on that. So you get the question about the state troopers. But then the FBI lurking in the background and saying, well, maybe now we'll pursue or refer him for a criminal prosecution. It just, to me, speaks very poorly of the fact that as long as you don't embarrass the Bureau, they're content with you doing just about anything.
Do you think that there's something to be said? People always go like, oh, how do we confirm if somebody's an FBI employee? And you and I both know that even if you want to go get, like, let's say a mortgage, then you've got to call the FBI and approve them confirming or denying that information. You have to actually go to HR and say, yes, you can release my records to this person. Unless you're Steve Friend or KyleSeraphin, then they'll just release your records to the New York Times. They got no problem with that. But if you want to do anything normal, if a regular person wants to confirm, hey, is this an FBI employee? That's not doable. I don't know any other organization that can get away with that. Like, you can't do that with the local police department. Like, hey, does this guy work for you? And they're like, we're not going to comment on people that may or may not work for us. Which is also weird because we got paid out of the Department of Agriculture, who I'm fighting right now.
Plausible deniability across the entire board. I mean, to the extent that I fought to try to get my training records to apply to be law enforcement in the state of Florida. And then finally, when my lawyers were like, you can't hold those back and require him to FOIA his own personal records as an actual Privacy Act law, they said, oh, okay, we'll give you some of them. And then sent them to the state. And then the state of Florida said that, well, the FBI said we can't confirm or deny that those are true. So it leaves them effectively useless. Like, there's no mechanism to correct it. They have the stranglehold, this python's grip on this information. And this guy was able to actually exploit that to his full advantage to continue to use his post of power to victimize the most innocent amongst us. Now, I mean, I'm glad that there's going to be justice, but that never should have happened to begin with.
Yeah, let's one more time recap that, folks. He became an FBI agent, apparently had sex with a woman at knife point and abused her for a year, if you believe the story that she had. And I'm sure some of that has to be true. Then he got fired. No criminal prosecution, despite that being a pretty aggressive sexual assault and workplace violence and so on, which the FBI claims to care about women. Then he faked his record and got hired as an Alabama state trooper. And the FBI, because the mechanism we're just talking about right now, probably didn't confirm or deny that those documents were legit. They were like, he didn't release his records, so we're not going to cover that. Then he got into a position where he abused a 12-year-old girl.
A second girl in the wait. There's additional charges pending on.
Right.
So it's been multiple victims. So a lot of fault to get thrown around here. And I'm happy to throw a huge chunk of it over at our ex-girlfriend because they're garbage.
So his name's Christopher Bauer. He's been convicted of first-degree sodomy, abuse of a child under the age of 12, and just got life in prison. So that's not nothing, but it's pretty amazing. Like, I cannot imagine this guy's fear of going into an Alabama correctional facility, because it's a state facility, as a pedophile, former state trooper, former FBI agent. That's got to be this. That's probably the scariest thing that you could ever do.
Well, we had this urban legend when I was a police officer. There's no way it's true, but it was just one of these things we talked about. And they're like, hey, if you go to jail as a cop, they have to protect you. So secretly, like in the backwoods of Virginia, there's like this institution there for like all the cops, and they put them there. And to me, I'm like, so wait, I'm just going to go to prison and hang out with a bunch of cops and tell war stories and make fun of the corrections officers as wannabe cops, and all of my food and needs are taken care of. Like, that sounds like a vacation. Why aren't more cops committing egregious crimes to be put in this installation?
Because it doesn't exist. Because
we can hope. We were making $16 an hour. We had to hope for something.
Yeah, you do have to hope for something. Okay. Some people hope for this when they were young men. It's not good for society. It is an interesting sort of animal. I don't remember this being the case when we were younger at all. There was always like every 5 or 10 years somebody hear it, and then you'd start the like hot for teacher rumors. But this is kind of wild stuff. This is the Louisiana mayor, okay, who is 42 years old, so she's my age. She graduated high school in 2000, same as me. She has worked for the city, and the city she worked for was in Beauregard Parish, their version of a county, because Louisiana has to do weird stuff. And they're kind of like a Catholic organized state. I always found like the idea of parishes, being somebody who's Catholic and grew up in parishes, I was like, why do they have official parishes that are government agencies? In any case, she apparently had sex with minors, and she's not an ugly woman. What do you think? I mean, give me an honest assessment.
No, she's definitely an attractive woman. She could probably find herself a mate that's in at least legal bounds, acceptable age range for herself. She doesn't even have to be a high achiever. I mean, I would think she could probably just be a mom and, stay home with the kiddos, and she could find a nice guy who makes a clean 6 figures.
She's got a great sort of trashy name. Her name is Misty Roberts. Misty sounds like a stripper name to me. I apologize to anybody who's actually named Misty, but I just think your parents hated you or they were not serious people. So who knows what her backstory is, but she worked for the city basically since she got out of college. She was worked in the communications department for 9 years, and then apparently said for 15 years she's been passionate about DeRidder. It's probably DeRidder if I'm going to be pronouncing that correctly. And so she turned herself in. She maintains her innocence because, in fact, she is innocent. So saith her attorney. Take that for what it's worth. She hasn't been charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, but she was indicted. I'm pretty confident that when you've been indicted, that's when you've been charged with a crime. Do you think this lawyer is worth his salt?
Well, he's got to be a zealous advocate for his client at this point. But I think we need to overcome the first hurdle here. I mean, there's like this joke about like, oh, did you hear about the teenage boy that was quote unquote raped by the older woman? Like, yeah, his hand fell off from getting high five by all his friends. But like, there's an actual serious victim here. I mean, there's young men that they're never going to be able to take away those memories from that. I mean, there's a permanent mark on them forever. And the fact that the role reversal here, it is different, and the fact that it is different to even talk about, it implies to me that yes, men and women are different, and we do apply different standards. However, when it comes to sexual assault, in this case, particularly when it's a underage victim, hey, same exact criminal justice system needs to apply to the fairer sex.
I'm going to take a slightly different tack on that. First of all, I think it matters the age of the victim. If he's 17, if he's 18-ish or whatever, if he's, almost 17, there's a different little animal there. I don't think it's good. I think it's bad for society. But I think this is what happens when you take men and women and try to hold them to the same standard. Then you're going to see this. You're going to have to see this because we've put women in the workplace and they're doing different things. And this is a woman essentially acting like a man, which is sort of a predatorial sexual nature, which is not the way that women naturally operate. And I don't know very many women that are like, you know what I need to find? A 17-year-old guy. Like, you must be disordered because there's no benefit there. They're actually, the biological reversal actually does make sense. There are men that have always looked for younger women because of fertility and things that are biological in nature. So we get that. But when you deny biology, which is what we're doing, and we're going to talk about that, how the Nazis hated the trans people, allegedly, even though they didn't, Vox magazine. So, take it for what it's worth. But there is something to be said. Like, yes, there are differences in the sexes, and we have to acknowledge them. And when you choose that you don't, you get weird stuff like Misty, the stripper named Mare, who decides to go out and bang out a teenager. Is that too crass? I don't, it's a symptom of our society, but I don't think it's actually a cause of anything. It just kind of shows us where we're at in this time.
I had the training where they were talking about the pedophile mindset.
Right.
And I'm never going to say that is not one of the most egregious things you can do, and you should be buried under the prison for it, whatever. But I do think that it was interesting that the actual pedophile said this and explained it in the most coherent fashion. And it's the most of his possible benefit you could give him psychologically. And he said, when I was 14, I was attracted to 14-year-old girls. And then when I was 16, I was still attracted to 14-year-old girls. And then when I was 18, still attracted. He's like, it's like my attraction never moved along with me, and it was acceptable. So in my head, I rationalized it. Well, this was acceptable for a time in my life. And you could see how that would happen. And maybe there's some sort of psychological practice here. I mean, maybe the fact that she's married, or she's named Misty, there might be like some trauma happened to her at a young age, and she's got that sort of issue. Like she never got over the fact that the high school senior quarterback gave her a good time once and didn't even give her a breath mint afterwards, as he then went off with the homecoming queen. Maybe there's a factor there going in, but to me, she is 42 years old. She knows what's right and wrong. Theoretically, she's supposed to be someone who's your believer, and there maybe should be more elite level of leadership. People who are mayor should be a higher level of intellect and know, like, hey, that's really evil. I probably shouldn't engage in that activity.
I'm going to put our chat up here because our chat has a couple of zingers. One of them was from Joe. I have to go up here. Joe Ragu told us that you can obviously tell the difference between men and women. It's the size of the penis. That is only a joke that works in 2024 when we have men and women's sports. And this is by the way, the claim about the trans athlete that was discriminated against was a woman who wanted to live as a man after competing as a woman. So you see the analogy there. It's like the left will make any argument as long as it's not honest. It is kind of funny to watch. If you're not watching us on Rumble, then you're missing out on this streaming chat that you're seeing over there. If you guys are on YouTube, or if you're over on X and you want to join us in the chat, they continue to go on. And there is one claim that has come out of our chat that I handed it to someone the other day. It was a military veteran, and they were like, can you requote that to me? I'm going to walk around and carry it. So I'm going to share it with you. If you're not in the live chat, the kind of commentary that you are missing out on is a phrase that is repeated by one handle. It's very long. I'm not going to say it, but you know who you are. And the statement is, the dildo of consequences rarely arrives lubricated. Just process that for a moment. Anybody who's been in the military knows this is true, by the way, and most people in law enforcement probably have experienced it. We used to call it the blue weenie or the green weenie, depending on what service branch you're in. I think anybody who's worked in federal service understands that the dildo of consequences rarely arrives lubricated. And yep, that's a perfect mindset for this Friday as we sort of see some of the just ridiculous things that are going on. I'm going to play you guys a couple of videos, Steve, as you process that. This is what's going on in Lebanon. This is a Lebanese strike that is responding to an Israeli strike. And I don't care who's right or wrong. What I care about is that there's now more conflict in the region. This is something that is fertile grounds for Donald Trump to attack. Probably better than discussing whether or not Kamala Harris is black or not. Not because he's probably not right, but I just don't care. This stuff seems like a real critical issue, and he's got a pretty good track record when it comes to not starting more Middle East wars or allowing them. So here you go. There's a little taste. I got a couple little videos. I just want you guys to feel it. So see what it looks like. This is ring cam footage if you're listening. It's black and white coming from somebody's house. All right, that's a little taste of it. I had a sample of 3 different videos there for you folks. Also a dog that was also unsettled by this, the way that I was. The thing that bothers me the most, and I'll have your response as well, is just looking at, like, those are just regular houses. Those are like where people live, and then you're watching rocket attacks go through the sky. It's so foreign to people who live in the United States to imagine that. How do you feel about that kind of thing happening over Florida? Are we ready for this here?
Go back to the conversation that people like to have about, oh, this country's on the verge of the civil war, and I'm ready. And I just say, no, you're not, because you don't know what civil war looks like. It looks like rocket attacks inside your comfortable gated community there, or watching your wife bleed out in the front yard. Meanwhile, I can't get you to go to a school board meeting. So how about we exhaust those sorts of mechanisms first before we just devolve into brother against brother part 2 on this one. I mean, watching the video too, I did have a chuckle of thinking in my head, is this a preview of the 6 o'clock raid at the Seraphin compound, where he would just be unleashing weaponized drones against the TAC team? I feel like that you'd be comfortable with that.
I had a really funny conversation with the SWAT team while I was sitting on their bags. This is after January 6th, actually. So this is mid to late January of 2021. And I'm sitting down in the SWAT team room, which I had key card access to because I was a medic. And so I was regularly in there for briefings. I did it all the time. And so I'm sitting there in the thing, and we're all just sitting on bags. A bag sit is just waiting for something to happen that didn't end up happening. Everyone thought that, like, the Capitol was going to get taken over or something, except me. I knew that was stupid. And so I'm just kind of like, I always kind of poke the bear. This will not surprise you a little bit, Steve, but I'd be like, and so I'm over here poking at these guys who were like they're tough talking about how they went into the Capitol the day before and they were shoving over protesters and I could have shot him, but I didn't, and all this other kind of BS. And I was like, hey, dudes, if you guys ever get the warrant from my house, will you please just call ahead and I will come out? And they're like, what? And I go, I don't know what's going on in this country right now, and maybe you're not paying attention, but you ought to be. But if you ever get the call to come after KyleSeraphin, do both of us the favor and just call me and I'll come out. And they were like, what, dude? And I was like, dude, I don't want to shoot a bunch of you guys in the head. Like, I know where to aim. I know my house better than you do. I've got, distractionary devices rigged up in the trees on public property. How many of you guys know what to do if a 1 or 20 pound propane canister explodes because I have incendiary ammunition, which I do? And they were like, look, who is this guy? And I'm like, yeah, like, you didn't know? I joined the FBI at 35. I already came in with a bunch of bad ideas. And I actually sort of believe in freedom, like owning a bunch of stuff. It goes to that pervasive nature of federal law enforcement right now, like not believing that other people should even own firearms, that people outside of like their little specific ranks. I think that's one of the biggest problems, in addition to not confirming or denying employment status and letting pedophiles in.
Look, they can't contemplate the fact that you likely do perimeter checks around your property and know all the ingress and egress routes to actually get to you. And you could actually mount a formidable defense. I mean, ultimately, you'll lose.
May or may not have sold weapons to my neighbors to be able to create L-shaped ambushes from both sides, from all sides of my home. That was just like a thing.
All laughing aside, this is what I cautioned about when I made my disclosure. I said, you're going to roll into a rural area that has a lot of don't tread on me flags flying at 6 o'clock in the morning to go get Bubba. And they're going to say, we don't care what Bubba did. We don't like you, Uncle Sam. And now you're going to be surrounded. I don't care how formidable your force is of 12 armed agents inside a Bearcat that may or may not be able to sustain 22 fire from a suppressed pistol. You're going to be outnumbered, and then you are going to be at risk, or you're going to put other people at risk when all you had to do was pick up the phone.
Yep.
It's pretty simple.
It does go back to that disclosure, which is just incredibly important. It's this mindset, the us versus them mentality, which we continue to do. Folks, if you're watching this right now and you're aware of a guy named Steve Baker who shows up on our program on a pretty regular basis, he's dropping a couple interviews today, or maybe one long form interview over at the Blaze TV. And I think it goes live like right now in a couple minutes. So go check that out after we're done here. And we talked about all these problems, like, there's a couple things that I think that should debunk. Number one, I'm sitting in the Blaze headquarters. We're talking very candidly. How many times do we get accused of being fed sycophants simply because we go and debunk stupidity? We did it this morning. Do you want to quickly touch on the Patriot Front thing? I don't have any slides set up for it, but we'll talk about it, and then we're going to get into some like the Russian assassin thing because that's kind of fun. But Amuse, which is a big account on X, on Twitter, went out there and basically said, we now have proof that the FBI is part of Patriot Front. Can you discuss the proof in the 950 pages of redacted stuff?
Yeah, I clicked through a lot of that, and a lot of it's redacted, so I can't say that I've read every word of it. But what I could read essentially showed that most of the written words in there were from the FBI saying that the preamble of "We believe Patriot Front is a racially motivated violent extremist group" as a preamble on just about every single document. And the actual incidents were effectively there were stickers put on the back of street signs, or 8.5 by 11 posters that were put on telephone poles on a college campus. So people got really nervous and called. There's no proof, there's no connection to the actual group itself. It's just people trolling. I mean, I think the only criminal violation I could possibly find was that somebody put a sticker on a Democrat mayoral candidate's campaign sign that was a QRE code for the Patriot Front website, which is it's probably a crime, but there's no connection that Patriot Front did it. And certainly no point in the 950 pages did the FBI say, aha, we're running these guys. There's no reference to a informant or undercover or anything like that.
All right. Let's push on to assassins. What I want to see from Russian assassins is that they look like Russian assassins. I need them to look like that. And this guy seems to do that. This is Vadim Kresikov, and he was recently in a prisoner exchange. This is a massive marketing and messaging victory for the Biden campaign, at least for this Friday. They're out there on every major news organization. This is coming from CBS, but it was on ABC and it was on CNN and so on. They were talking about the U.S.-Russia prisoner exchange for this guy, a Russian assassin who was serving a life sentence in Germany. CBS takes kind of like the more negative approach. The other ones are all touting the fact that we got a Wall Street journalist or Wall Street Journal reporter back and a couple of other Americans, including Paul Whelan, a Marine veteran. And so all these people were swapped sort of for this like espionage type cases. And I think it was a 24-person complex prisoner swap. Everyone was most interested in the assassin and a couple Americans that have kind of name recognition in the U.S. But then you find out like what this guy was all about. He was working for the FSB. I think that's somewhat interesting. And he basically went out and killed a Chechen Georgian citizen in Berlin. So a legit international FSB Russian assassin is going back to work, I guess, probably with bonuses and promotions. And we're getting Americans. There was this big back and forth about who would have done a better job. And the Biden administration said, we would have never let these people get taken in the first place, even though at least two of them happened while Biden was in charge of the three major names. So it's all silliness, unfortunately. But You've got a little Slavic connection in your house. How do you feel about? Does this look like any family member that you have to deal with? Do you have any like in-laws that are running that kind of goatee thing?
I purposely put a very firm wall between me and those connections to get through the vetting process at the FBI. But I just want to take into account we've now given up the merchant of death.
Yeah.
We're
giving the Russians back all their toys.
And this guy, so to get Brittany Griner back, that was the trade. I mean, I don't know if you're going to win the pennant with that trade. Seems like the negotiating skills, we might need to have a little bit better negotiations in there. It seems like almost the Russians sort of fully expect there to be a different hand at the wheel here in the near future, and they are going to try to get what they can while they can get it. I don't know if it's going to be Miss Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, but it'll certainly be a different person at the helm, and that means it'll be a different mentality, you would think.
What about do you think they read The Art of the Deal before they went and tried to negotiate this Russian prisoner swap?
There would have been a lot more talk about like, these guys are fantastic. Nobody's ever seen a deal quite as good as
Nobody's ever seen it so good as this. Yeah, all right. So People are saying that's a good one too. Okay, so I've got Kamala Harris on the tarmac talking about how amazing things are. Joe Biden is confused at the word salad. This is probably not sized properly, so give me a sec to resize it on the video part of it. But the audio you guys should be able to hear pretty clearly. So let's listen to Kamala Harris praising, I guess, themselves for her great work. And, take a deep breath because it's always going to be kind of weird.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
How good is she at that one? Was it incredible, extraordinary, and significant?
She likes to lean on the word significant. She has a significant dependence on the word significant. And Joe Biden just is standing there with his mouth agape for those who were not watching because he's not in control of all of his facilities at this point.
Mhm.
And it's not even just the word
Well,
salad.
let's be fair, because it was dark outside, and we know that is basically the kryptonite of Joe Biden at this point. Anytime that's too early or too late.
Yes, he does not fall within the apex predator territory. That's when he needs to go inside and get his pudding and turn the Roomba back on the charging stand and make sure he's good to go at 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. the next day. He's like the aging Roomba. We have like one of the older Roombas that really just can't sustain the charge to do the full floors anymore. That's Joe Biden at this point. He has to charge up midway through sweeping the floor. But Kamala Harris, she does the word salad thing everybody's gonna make fun of, but she also does the thing that all the leftists do, and they talk about diplomacy. Diplomacy, they're like, that's the solution. I'm like, that's not a solution. That's like
tactic.
saying, yeah, I wanna win the Super Bowl. And it's like, you know what, the way we're gonna do that is to practice. Okay. And then after you win the Super Bowl, they say, you know, how'd you do it? What were the strategies you had to take into this game to beat this opponent? You would say like, oh, well, they had a really good defense on the run, so we had to throw. There was actually strategy involved. Instead, you say practice.
Yeah, we just looked at a lot of game tapes, and then we went after it, and then we talked to them. We talked to our players about what we wanted to do.
That's someone bubble wrapped, someone who has oversight.
Yes, all bad, all dumb. Let's talk about apex predators. Let's talk about human beings being apex predators. And if you want to eat meat like an apex predator, you see that weird little segue? MattHatJerky.com/Kyle. Again, it's Matt with 2 T's, hat with 1 T, jerky.com/Kyle. Mine is downstairs, actually, because my kids, sometimes the only protein they will eat is jerky. I don't know why that is. Maybe they know it's on dad's desk and it's more interesting. You can use our promo code to save 20% off anytime you go over there. And then you can continue to get that 20% off if you lock in a subscription, which is what I do. You can set it out for 2 weeks or a month or 2 months or whatever, depending on how fast you eat it. This stuff lasts for about 3 months at a time, so it's not emergency food per se, but it is a great snack. It'll keep you from kind of losing your charge like the human Roomba. You will be able to keep your brain tight instead of having those crashes with sugar and all kinds of other carb-heavy garbage. I think it's the only thing Steve Friend would eat other than almonds. If he was going to eat something, it would be steak in a bag, would it not?
I want some almond-coated Mad Hat jerky. If they can make that happen, maybe we'll engage in some sort of relationship with the American Radicals podcast. That'd be fantastic.
That could be a cross promo. I'm into it. All right, let's talk about the celebration. We have to defend Kamala at all costs. By the way, the New York Times ran an article said that like the Kamalabalapi, I don't know, they had some word like the commonology is real. Like it's so not faked. When they tell you, when somebody has to come out and tell you, okay, this reminds me of a bumper sticker. And I was a paramedic for a while. And if you've been a paramedic, you know that chronic pain syndrome or fibromyalgia is kind of like, it's kind of like the biggest red flag that anybody can tell you. Whenever you go on a call and someone's like, and you've probably seen this as a cop too, and they're like,
schizophrenic. Oh, he's schizophrenic. Like,
well,
that's
no, he's probably not.
You
just don't agree.
diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah. You don't agree with what he says, but that doesn't mean he's crazy. So the same thing would be the case for fibromyalgia. And I always knew that fibromyalgia was like iffy. It's a diagnosis of exclusives. Like we don't really know what you have, but you sound like you're in pain. You even have some of the markers maybe that show, difficulty, whether it's psychosomatic or whether it's real. Fine. Chronic pain is the thing. Some people have it. Some people claim it and they don't. So fibromyalgia used to have the bumper sticker, right? And I always used to make the joke. It's not a good sign when the bumper sticker for your disease has a slogan like fibromyalgia did. So you would see the bumper stickers for cancer. It's like, together we can beat it, like pink ribbon, right? Or it'd be like a yellow ribbon. It'd be like leukemia. It's not the end. It's just the beginning. The fight has just started or whatever. And then you'd see fibromyalgia. And like underneath it, the ribbon would say, it's real. The commonobophilamally, it's real. It's not real. I know that you're faking it, and you're faking it and doing this kind of stuff. So here's the article that comes up. This is an entire, basically this is the meme of the soldiers like catching all the grenades and the knives and the stuff, and Kamala Harris is sleeping comfortably in bed and drooling. Kamala Harris's life, career, and firsts from AG to vice presidency throughout her life. She has shared her share of firsts, and their next first could now be the presidency. Can they be more breathless? I'll let you do that while I find a nice quote that I want to read to you guys.
Well, and the imagery here, where you have the lighting set up, it's very Obama-esque, where it looks like the halo behind her as she's
Dude, she's doing a walkout onto a sports, like she's literally walking onto a
high school gym to the applause of dozens of people.
Dozens minimum. Look, there's even empty chairs that you can see in this stage shot.
It's so fake, but it was so predictable. And
she's a barrier breaker. How dare you, Steve Friend? She's a barrier breaker. So say it. In early childhood, she was a barrier breaker because she was a child and her mom was from India and her dad was from Jamaica. And that made her a barrier breaker. They've got some nice childhood pictures of her. She looks like she's on the far right of this particular one. She's hanging out with her cousins. Her cousins look really cool, by the way. And they also look like they didn't want to hang out with her. She's got 4 to 5 feet between her and the other kids, and all the other kids are within 2 feet of each other. I don't think they liked her. That's just my take. Parents got divorced at 7.
Kwanzaa celebration?
Yes. No, it was in Jamaica. I don't know what goes on in Jamaica. They show her early career and college pictures. She's wearing a leather jacket, and her friend is wearing a cardigan. And that's when she saw the beauty of Howard University and the beauty of being young and gifted and black and so on and so forth. There's this really fun little moment because we're having this back and forth on whether or not Kamala Harris is actually black. Constantly now in the news cycle. Anything you do is basically racism or sexism or misogyny. I'm going to tell you the real choice that we have in November as we finish this up. Okay. So that's what I want you guys to hold on for. The real choice in November is actually far simpler than any policy decision or if you like Kamala or if you like Trump. So I'm going to share with that in just a sec here. But they just kind of push out there how she was the first lady. She was the first African-American woman and South Asian American woman to hold the office of what, AG? Like, what is this crap?
How far down
like,
on the qualifier list are we?
I don't know how many times. Yeah, how many times do you have to be the first fill in the blank thing before I don't care?
I'm the first guy named Steve Friend who's gone by the online moniker Real Steve Friend to ever host a podcast on Rumble before.
You're also the first. You're the first Steve Friend to own that house. You're the first Steve Friend to own the house that you live in.
Yes.
It's shocking. You should actually put that on a sign outside of your house. Let's play a little game here, which is called this like racist nonsense. First of all, I want people to see the difference of these two types of rallies. There was a guy basically who sets this up. Here, you're going to hear what he does. But he puts on a Trump shirt and he goes into a Biden rally. He puts on a Biden shirt and he goes into a Trump rally and he deals with people of different color. It's just kind of like a fun little thing. Like the types of people that support this stuff, you have to be pretty bird-brained to be excited about the first woman of South Asian American descent to hold an office. Like just nobody cares. Not in America. And I'm going to show you some proof of that, actually, because we actually have a graph from Gallup that is being touted on the story about sexism. So let's get a little taste of that. But first, these are the differences. I think these are fun to show. A little contrast.
Watch as this guy goes to a Biden protest in a Trump shirt and a Trump event in a Biden shirt. You can clearly see the difference between Trump and Biden supporters.
I'm right into the Biden protest with the Trump shirt. Get your ass across the street. What the f*** is everyone so hostile?
Go over there with your people.
You guys are my people. Look.
No, you're not.
No, Biden sniffs children, not Trump. No, stop. Don't sniff. Stop, I'm blending in. No. Why is everyone so angry? I'm just walking the sidewalk. You see how much hate it is over here? It's a public sidewalk. I feel like I'm gonna get jumped out. Oh. So when you poured water on me, did it make you feel happy?
Yeah.
I have to change shirts. Can I hide behind you? Okay.
Don't give me a hug.
Okay. I was feeling crazy today. Hey, come on. It's just so much more respect over here. I'm here for my favorite president, Biden 2024. I want to sniff children.
Okay, he cheated a little bit by saying the sniff children thing, but he's walking around in the shirt and he's not getting the instant hate. I think that's real.
I think there's an identity issue between the two. I've heard. I can steal the idea, but basically, it says that if you ask people why they vote Republican, it's like, well, because I like low taxes, I'm a small government person, I want to support the military. Those general ideas, ideologically based. If you ask someone why they vote Democrat, it's because I'm black, or it's because I'm a woman. It's more ingrained in your identity that they can't separate themselves from those immutable characteristics, and I think that creates a lot more vitriol because it's right there. It's on your sleeve, right? And you view anything on the other side as being against that, and it's a direct threat to your existence. And the fact that the media tells them that on a fairly regular basis is just contributing to their derangement and their delusions that that guy walking around with a ridiculous mullet is a threat to their being able to draw breath.
He looked like Joe Dirt. It's very comforting to me.
Can I just
ABC.
say that here's my, I'm going to speculate here. Okay. Kamala Harris will be the 47th president of the United States. I don't know how long, but I think that the move for Joe Biden to cement his legacy as a transformational president would be to hand the reins over to Kamala Harris, because he actually like blots and dies. He has health problems. She loses the election and he doesn't want to hand the sword over like Cornwallis to Washington. He's going to just have a subordinate do it. And he says, hey, Kamala, I'll make you the president for the next 2 months and you can break the glass ceiling. And she takes it. And she can always forever be the first one, the first Asian woman, the first Black woman, the first woman to have been president of the United States.
She's the first woman. You know what the best part about all that would work for? They've already set that up, because Biden ran the primary and Kamala is reaping the benefits of it. She's about to get the nomination without ever having to be in the primary. Probably because she can't win a primary. Okay, here's this little thing. Trump is doubling down on his false racial attacks. By the way, I love reading stories about Donald Trump because they love to talk about the false claims. I never see this with anybody else. It's part of the reason why Trump supporters get so rabid. It's because they can see that they're being lied to actively at all times. And these people, I don't know if, and you know, who do they get to say that he didn't think the comments were appropriate? Lindsey Graham. I don't know what that man's body is built like, but I have to imagine that it is a lot of really sort of curvy lines and kind of like dumpy in places it ought not to be. The guy has no kids. He's been a senator forever. He has no excuse not to be a complete brick shithouse of fitness. And instead, he's the softest, butteriest, most greasy slime ball in the pocket of the intel community that you've ever found.
He comes from South Carolina and he can't find one ambitious debutante who wants to marry herself a senator. It's probably because he's very, very
get us canceled every time.
Backdoor access anywhere possible, as we saw from the Senate hearing where he was all about the Going Dark initiative. He's very interested in going dark with people named Paul.
Steve, folks, you don't know this, but Steve is essentially like a cutout version and a character sort of mirror of what my wife does. She has awful impressions of people, and they always sound funny to me. And Steve is always he's gonna get us canceled by doing a Southern debutante that sounded sort of like an effeminate.
It sounded like Lindsey Graham.
It kind of did. Okay, so he's doubling down on this attack. This is ABC, and they've gone after it. You guys remember the attack? We played this yesterday. This is the so-called elephant in the room. So, because he says, I don't know if she's black, or like, how does she want to be known? Like, she's kind of trotted out whatever was appropriate. There's a great response by J.D. Vance. I actually think it speaks to the intelligence of a J.D. Vance, who is smarter than the people around him. So I got a couple little takes on J.D. Vance because I think he needs more play, only because I want to hear more of what he had to say. And if he's like this, I'll take it. It's good. It's good for Trump to have a J.D. Vance that's smart. Here's the elephant in the room, Pete.
I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States.
Did you notice? But okay, that's as much as I play because I played it yesterday, folks. If you want to hear it, go watch yesterday's show and then give us a 5-star review and give us a thumbs up there. So the funny thing about it is that she leads with, like, you made false claims. It's so Karen-y. It's so gnarly. And so then that's the actual title here, is the false racial attacks. What is a false racial attack other than it might be something like this? You tell me if this is a false racial attack.
Black woman.
Okay, that's why I agree with that. I agree with that. But is she African American? No. But is she African American? There's a difference. There's nothing wrong with that. No one is trying to take anything away from her.
Let's go down into her lineage.
I think you're falling into a trap of that. All she had to do was say, I am black, but I'm not African American. That's it.
Don, I'm not falling in a trap. I'm not falling in. Let me finish. Hold on. I'm not falling into a trap by that. When she goes down her lineage, many Africans landed in Jamaica and all these other Caribbean islands. So she could indeed
Jamaica's
be
not America.
African American mixed with other races. But she is
Jamaica's not America.
But she is a black woman. She was born
did not
here.
Come out of Jim Crow.
Okay, well let's go into Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was born in Canada.
I'm not talking about Ted Cruz. This is not about Ted Cruz. You're changing the subject.
But you know what? We cannot. It was hypocrisy. I'm not changing the subject.
Yes, you are changing the subject.
She's a black woman. I don't know what you want.
Cruz.
Okay.
Don't change the subject. Jamaica's not America. Is there anything funnier? By the way, that was Don Lemon, who is now auditioning for a role. That's back at CNN, but he should be part of the Trump campaign with that stuff. That's brilliant.
There's nothing better than the two white guys sandwiched between the two of them arguing that are just like, I don't want to wind up getting
my racial privilege.
Yeah,
the one guy, the little nerdy guy who looks like a glowworm, looks like you open up a book and he pops out and explains to you what's going on in the book. That guy, he was like, I better shut my mouth. There's an angry lady and there's a gay black man speaking right now. I better just shut up and listen. And he did. And then Don Lemon killed it. Thanks, Don Lemon.
I think he mansplained a little bit.
Bro, Jamaica is not America. Facts are facts. They don't care about your feelings. Jamaica didn't have Jim Crow. I'll take it.
Trump interaction there, just briefly, I think you've covered it. He's not artful. He's very inartful in the way he speaks. Mm-hmm. To me, the bro move would have been, and because the crawl over broken glass people loved it. The people who hated him hated it. If you want to get that person in the middle, why does he has to do the hardest thing, and that is sit there, get insulted, and not respond to it, and just say, that's interesting. Did you know almost got assassinated? Have you looked at the southern border? I think that's probably more relevant to the audience here. Let's talk about that. Like he did in the debate. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about.
It's a Reagan move. That's how you do it. My dad talked about that, the Reagan press conference. In fact, my dad talked about interviewing Ronald Reagan. So you guys come back and listen to that interview. It's actually pretty fun. And he said, I asked him a question and then he answered something that had nothing to do with the question. So I said, follow. And then he said, I asked him the question again, the same question, and he gave a completely different answer. And then I asked him the same question again, and he gave a third different answer. You can do that if you're Donald Trump and you spin it a little bit and people will listen to what you have to say. I mean, he already rambles. This is not rambling. This is on point. This is J.D. Vance dismantling this weak reporter from CNN. I think it's CNN. Crushes him kindly, intelligently. And he makes the point that Donald Trump is trying to make, but he does it better. Trump needs a J.D. Vance type guy. He needs a Vivek Ramaswamy. He needs an explainer. He needs someone that's sharp and capable and pointed. Kash Patel, take your pick. There's a lot of people in his camp that are bright, and they know what he means, even if it's not what he says. And here's a little taste of it.
The former president's comments yesterday to the National Association of Black Journalists, where he said that Vice President Harris is, quote, all of a sudden black. As a father of 3 biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?
They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She goes to Georgia 2 days ago. She was raised in Canada. She puts on a fake Southern accent. She is everything to everybody, and she pretends to be somebody different depending on which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough-on-crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy.
Yeah, that one. So there you go. J.D. Vance is just calling it as she's a chameleon, which is to say she's a fake. We see it. Some of us do. That didn't sound Southern at all. She ain't no ways tired when she's talking out there on that tarmac. Did you listen to that Hillary Clinton
They
thing?
were there to get her in 2020, and they could be there again in 2024.
They were coming to put y'all in whatever I say. She should do Foghorn and Leghorn. That'd be way more fun. I would like Foghorn and Leghorn. She's trying to channel Malcolm X, but she's a female, and I think Foghorn and Leghorn, I'd be more interested. It makes a lot more sense. It's also a lot more fun. Here is a man's man explaining why J.D. Vance is a terrible candidate if you're on the left, and I understand it, and I agree with it. The whole situation has been kind of trotted out, the story of weirdness. I don't know why weird. Like, how many friends do you have that you would categorize as weird, or your wife would categorize? Let's be better. How many of your friends would your wife call weird?
Well, she thinks I'm weird, so all of my friends would be weird.
All of your friends are weird. Yes. And actually, wives, look at your husbands, think about their friends. You'd be like, your friends are weird. My buddy's wife came to me and said, Kyle, you're one of the extremers. And I was like, the what? And she was like, I call all of my husband's friends extremers because they're all nuts. They're all like hardcore into whatever it is that they're into. They're ultra distance marathon runners. They're long range shooters, and they have, ammo press at their kitchen table. Like, they're weirdos. And you're one of them. And now I was like, yeah, all my friends are extremers. We're like the Avengers, but we're just like extreme on one thing all the time. That's kind of a superhero thing. Anyway,
it's a male quality. We're all about
quality.
that life, whatever that life is. Women are kind of like, I'll dabble a little bit. The one extremers, those are the ones in the Olympics. Otherwise, they're just kind of regular.
Did you see that guy, by the way, speaking of the Olympics, which I don't really care about, the Turkish guy, the shooter?
Yes, I did.
Okay, folks, if you're not paying attention to the Olympics, which you don't need to because it's not important, this is the first time in my life that I remember like not caring even a little bit. But there's this Turkish dude, he's 52 years old, and everything about him is like the stories that you used to love about the Olympics. And they'd go and they'd be like, hometown hero. The guy is 52. He's Turkish. He is a competitive shooter that just won the silver medal. And he rolls in and everybody else is wearing these like super aggressive, like, costumes made out of specialized leather with straps to hold their body in place. And it's like nothing but frociaggine everywhere. And they're doing weird shit with their eye things. They got a patch on one side and a magnifier on the other. And they're focusing and they're shooting. And he rolls in like jeans and a crappy t-shirt. He's a mechanic full time. He gets to shoot like nobody knows how he trains. He just shows up and just smokes bullseyes. And he just stands there with his hand in his pocket, no specialized gear. Boom, knocks out a silver medal, and then's like, yo, is there a smoking area in this place? Are we in Paris? Can I smoke or what? Epic. And he also told his ex-wife that he wants his dog back. That was his victory speech. And he's apparently got into shooting because he got divorced.
Seems like an extreme.
He's about that life, man. He's just like, I got to do something else. Now I don't have a wife. I guess I'll be a competitive shooter and win an Olympic silver medal.
He kind of puts the kibosh on the myth that you have to devote yourself to the monkish lifestyle in order to send rounds and be engaging in meditation and your breathing habits. The dude just throws down a cancer stick and whips out his revolver and bests almost all of you.
Everybody. Yeah. And like normally he's like working with greasy fingers and like doing engine hoists. So the thing that reminds me of like some of the special operators I used to run with that you'd see, like especially the instructors, they were freaks. They're all freaks. They're all specialized freaks. I had a dude lift up a Concept 2 rower for some reason and ran around the building with it to tell us that we were weak. We were running and he was running, but he was running with a rower on his back, which is really awkward. It's not really heavy, but it's seriously awkward. And he just picked it up and he was like, you're all weak. No, like, how are you going to replace me? What's special about you? And you're like, I don't know. Why are you running with a rower, dude? And I'm like 30 years old when this is going on. So I'm looking at him and like, I have all the awareness of that's a weird dude right there. He's roughly my age or older. I saw dudes that would smoke cigarettes and then go on a run with us. And because they were smoking cigarettes, they couldn't run like 17 and 18-year-old dudes were. So they would be like, sprint to that tree and back. And then they would turn around and run the other direction and put the cigarette out. like weirdos. I love weirdos. Here's a guy that understands a little bit about this. This is Nick Freitas. He's a congressman, but he's also a retired Green Beret. And he's talking about the weirdo factor, which is real about J.D. Vance. I think his take is perfect.
I don't know if you guys have heard the new talking points coming out of the Harris campaign and the Democrats with respect to J.D. Vance, but apparently we're supposed to demand that he be taken off the ticket because he's, quote, weird. And you know what? They've got a point. I mean, look at this guy. All happily married with kids. I bet he doesn't trans any of them. Nope. All Democrats were asking for was somebody, normal. Right? The guy that's maybe occasionally been led around by a dog leash at a BDSM parade in San Francisco. Right? The sort of salt of the earth, grounded individual who occasionally gets dressed up in drag and reads to other people's children. Right? And it doesn't stop with that. Right? It's going to affect policy. You let J.D. Vance anywhere near the executive branch, and I can guarantee you this much, we will no longer get level-headed senior policy directors who occasionally get arrested for stealing women's luggage at the airport. All Democrats asked for was normal, and we gave them this freak show. Our bad.
What do you think?
Well, he overlooked a few of the other normal people out there, like the ones that like to desecrate statues and burn and take down flags and replace them with Palestinian and then walk off scot-free. Like that's the really normal activity that we want to engage in. But otherwise, I think he kind of pointed it out what we might have erred in our decisions here. Sam Britton, he's walking free now, right? They didn't give him any jail time. He's certainly a potential running mate for
Why would they?
The Democrats.
So the claim has been essentially that you've got sexism and racism and anything you do against Kamala Harris is you being a really bad person. Okay, so here's the actual numbers from an article making that claim. Okay, how will sexism impact Harris's presidential campaign? She's already responding to a slew of gendered and racist attacks. So saith Meredith Conroy from 538. And yet the graph that they use is on the screen to back their point. It's a Gallup poll starting from 1958, asking, would people be comfortable with a black or woman candidate for president? non-specific to party. And it started down that they'd be comfortable with a black candidate in like the upper 30s in 1958 and a woman candidate in about the low 50s. And they both ended at about 93% of people in this country are cool with black women as long as, here's the real kicker, they're generally well qualified for the nomination of their party. Like they're generally well qualified is the only so Americans only care about meritocracy according to Gallup, and yet we're going to have to go out there and believe we're talking about a racist and sexist country, even though more than 9 out of 10 people don't poll that way. How wild is this time? Like,
this is the 30 by 30 initiative which I've read through.
Yeah.
And it says that job knowledge tests are discriminatory against racial minorities and women. They need to go away because they measure merit and subject matter expertise on policing, dealing with taking away people's freedom, possibly their lives, because we need to get rid of that. That's the push.
Yeah, we need women for the sake of women. Can I tell you what I think the most important decision is in November? I'm going to make this pitch to you folks. Let me go full screen for this, Steve. Hang in here. The most important decision that anybody has to make, if you're on the fence about whether you want to do a Kamala Harris presidency, there's not a lot of those people in this live chat in our audience, I have to imagine, or if you want a Donald Trump, but you can share this with your neighbors that are otherwise on the fence. The only thing that you have to decide, do you want to hear that everything is racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic, and so on for the next 110 days, or do you want to hear it for the next 4.5 years? That's the only decision you really have to decide. Because if she doesn't win, we get to hear that Donald Trump is an a-hole for the next 4 years. But if she does win, everything and every attack against her for the entire time that she's in charge of anything will all be this bullshit.
We have proof of concept. That's exactly what happened under the Obama administration. I mean, the only thing he did wrong was wear a tan suit that one time. Don't worry about the pallets of billions of dollars that we sent over to Iran. Don't worry about all the we're going to take over healthcare. And now all of a sudden, have you looked at your insurance rates? The fact that we basically brought in communism widespread into this country under his presidency. And if you noticed it, you were racist. It's not a sensical line to draw, but when has sense meant anything to the media? They're outcome people. They want that result.
Here's the sense. This is the result. The result is we are in the biggest inflation-adjusted housing price increase in the last 130 years, which is probably all of America. All of American history would probably fall into this. Again, I showed this yesterday. I had people reach out and say, hey, could you send me that graph? I'm going to throw it in the face of people. This is what the real issues would look like if we had a serious country talking about serious problems. We've now made housing so unaffordable that it's the least affordable in multiple generations and maybe in the history of the country. And we are so far off the rails. And the only correction we had was in 2008, which was a financial collapse. It actually brought things back in line. Now they're going back off the rails again. And we are now 25% off worse than we were in 2008 before that crash happened, that readjustment in the market. So that's interesting. Here's another thing. This would also be a serious topic, which is at the bottom of any of the folds of any of the newspapers or web pages. The U.S. economy added 114,000 jobs last month, far fewer than expected. 250,000 people also filed for unemployment. So I don't know if that's a net gain, but it doesn't look like it based on my basic numbers. And so they're talking about jobs are going to start slowing. We're going to start seeing some problems. We're going to see this issue that we are no longer recruiting people into the places they need to be. They were expecting 175,000 jobs and that they were hoping that the unemployment rate would remain the same. None of those things are happening. Again, these are all claims that are in favor of Donald Trump. I'm going to keep pushing forward because this is the funniest part. And this is probably why we're in this place, Steve. You ready?
Send it.
Making money from news aimed at Gen Z is easier said than done. This is the New York Times. The Washington Post created a division. They bought up a company that was called The Movement, I want to say. Yes, The News Movement, founded by this guy, Will Lewis, who you're seeing on the screen. And they were basically saying, we're going to take bold new attempts to contact Gen Z with actual information. And Gen Z said, no, we want to watch cat lady videos and dudes eating Tide Pods. And what was the Kick in the Nut channel that used to be on the, that was in Idiocracy? That's what they want to see.
Hey, look, not now. I'm baiting. That's what we've devolved into. Idiocracy was prophecy.
It was. And it's not supposed to be. It was supposed to be a cautionary tale. It wasn't supposed to be an aspirational tale. We took the wrong message from Idiocracy. Everybody's wearing Crocs, by the way. I see this. They're wearing Crocs.
I wear socks with my Crocs, so totally guilty.
That's so gross. You shouldn't have shared that. I wish I didn't know that about you now.
I'm comfortable in my own skin and my footwear.
Yeah, you are. Now listen, we'll go back into the last little taste here of stupidity, and then I got a couple things funny because like the weekend's ready to run out. How about this? This is a great fun thing. I found this on a social media site. Then I looked up the actual article. It's coming from Vox. It was released yesterday, lest you think that this is not timely. Like, this is yesterday's article. Discrimination against trans Olympians has roots in Nazi Germany. Everyone that I dislike and everybody I disagree with is a Nazi. How to argue for idiots. And what they have, their only examples they have are women who experience attacks on their looks. Like, what's her name? Simone Biles. Is that her name?
Gymnast, yes.
Yep. And also the tennis players. Now I've lost their names. Serena Williams and Venus Williams. And because they have like really muscular forms, and they do, there's no doubt about it. Like, they're stud athletes. I used to work out with women when I was in high school and swam with them. Like, most physically fit people, some were built like beautiful women. And you're like, man, that's shocking that they're so fast and athletic and so on. And some of them were built like people that could beat your ass because they just had bigger builds. Like, that's just the nature, more muscular, more dense. The claim is that those women get unfair, and they're just like women who were in the 1930s that were living in Nazi Germany that wanted to become men. So they competed as women, and then they dressed as men for the rest of their lives and got male ID cards and wore a tie. That's the same as us being mean to men being in women's sports actively while they're competing in the Olympics. That's the false sort of premise that is laid out here. And so that makes you a bigot, apparently.
Godwin's law for the win, as always. Every argument devolves into a reference to Nazism. I mean, it's basically anytime you have a debate and it devolves into an ad hominem attack, it means you've won the debate.
Right.
Well, this is the same thing. If they call you a Nazi and there's not actually any concrete evidence that you are, doing a Frankie Figs 8-8 reference in your life at all, I think you just won the argument. And if they want to take back the space of sports for women, it's going to require women actually stepping up and saying, like, I've trained for this, but I'm not going to engage in it and do it in force. And it's going to require real men coming forward and saying, no, a bunch of dads coming out and saying, not in my girls' sports.
I'm getting conned in or getting dragged into putting my girls into some sporting type events. We went to academy and picked up like a bunch of sports balls. So now we have a soccer ball and football, and we have baseballs, and we have softballs, and we have a tee, and we have a bat, and we have all this stuff. We have all this accoutrement. We have cones that my girls can run obstacles. We got a ladder, agility drill. We're going to start putting them through the paces, mostly because we've got to train for war. But I always wanted to avoid the sports thing, only because I feel like we're not going to have sports in like 10 years. We're going to have the rocket attacks like we saw in Lebanon. So that seems like it's more likely. That being said, if some dude or some dad wants to put his son out on the field with my girls when they're old enough for it to make a difference, which is not far from where they're at right now. Like 7, 8 years old, like 8-year-old boys start making a pretty big difference. Do you remember Boys Against Girls when you were a kid? Did you ever play that in any sport?
Yes, always. And that was a big deal. If you lost, man, that's something you can't walk away from. I think, I would rather have lost to that weird dude taking the shot in the pistol shooting contest at the Olympics than lose to a girl and dodge.
Yeah, that guy's like that's like losing to the Big Lebowski. Like, that dude is a bro. He walks up and he's like, and you're like, man, if I was cooler, I would train less and be that awesome. I knew guys that would show up to this used to bother me. There's a guy named Dave Lidla. I don't know why I'm gonna say his full name, but I did. And Dave was an absolute stud. He was a totally freakishly talented swimmer, and he went and got a scholarship, I think, to the University of Texas. So really good swimming school. And he showed up for one of our meets, and he was hungover, and he like broke the high school record for the state. He was freakishly good, or he set the school record, whatever it was. And he was like, I'm so hungover. And then he dominated everything. I knew guys that would show up and they'd be like, I was drinking last night. And I'm like, I didn't drink in high school. I didn't understand the lure of it. They'd show up and they would destroy a track tournament. They're like my best performances. Like I would go puke after I ran, but I was hungover. And I'm like, maybe you were dehydrated. The weight advantage was there for you. But there are people who can come out there and make you look bad when they're not training the way that they should. They're not like eating healthy and getting all the sleep and doing all the right things. Like, they're just living their weirdest, best life, and they're still freakishly talented. And I don't know, getting beat by that Turkish guy would be that kind of category. I think that's a victory, actually. You're like, God wants him to win.
Some dudes just got it, man. We're all built different.
We're all built different. Okay, I got, what do you want? 5-star review, or you want, I got 2 kind of palate cleansers, and I can't remember what one of them is. So
Why don't you just start with the palate cleanse and
All right,
figure
we'll
it
start
out
with one.
The grab bag if it works.
Yeah, this is a grab bag. Let's see where we go here. Ready? Let's shut this thing down for the day as we go into it with.
Look, this'll only take a second. I need your attention. It's important and I swear you're gonna wanna listen. I'm sorry that they paused frozen, that wasn't my intention. But if the speech could save one life, it'd be worth the effort. Yeah, and there's no smoking on here whatsoever. And don't be nervous if it's bumpy, girl, that's just the weather. Pilot Sam is in control, there ain't nobody better. And if we feeling turbulence, we're feeling it together. But we can still have some fun. This is how to work a seatbelt if you've never done one. If you see the oxygen mask, stay calm and relax. Put it on yourself before you help a loved one. Yeah, don't be nervous if there's something we can help you with. But when you see that food cart, keep your elbows in. Yeah, keep your elbows in. Look, I'm about to meet up with Alexis. She's out in Texas. I'ma study her body like I'm studying these exits. Once you're located on your left and right, I go by the name of Drizzy, baby. Enjoy the flight.
Okay, that's if Drake were to do the safety brief on your airplane. Some of you guys are going to be flying for the weekend, so I thought of that. I always feel like Steve is leaving places on Friday, so if you leave, there's Drake doing it. But that's not how I'm going to end it. So let me do a 5-star review, and then I'll end it properly with something about maybe something more realistic for some of y'all. 5-star review coming from Trucky117, one of our regular listeners. Truth tellers, 5 stars. Kyle, Steve, and Garrett are the truth tellers of our time. They bring the receipts and they defend the Constitution just like the kitchen table in the firehouse where all the world's problems were solved. Trucky, appreciate that. High praise. There are some really good conversations that happen in firehouses, some of the funniest. And it was the place that I used to be able to introduce the EMS bingo card, which was my favorite. People would like fight over what card they wanted to get because they knew what calls they think were coming in based on what day of the week it is. Firehouse conversation is good. Okay, this one, Steve, this is not Steve friend Steve. There are a lot of Steves out there. Not all of them have such high moral character as you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think there's probably proof of concept somewhere. I could probably find a Steve out there who's pretty evil. I don't know.
Not
Stephen
evil.
Hawking seems to not have a good track record. So
okay,
yeah,
this guy
I'm better.
Steve Hawkins is always on wheels. This guy's on wheels, not the kind of wheels you expect. He's in a skylift. If you don't know what that is, it's one of those scissor-jacked platforms that raises up and you can do things on a construction site. But he's on the roadway, and he has a very interesting little interaction with the cop. I don't know if this is staged. I hope not. And even if it is, it's still funny. Steve, where are you going in that thing?
Sir, pull that lift to the side of the road. Stop now.
What the heck are you doing out here?
43 in charge.
I'm working a job site right there, man.
45.
Right down there. What are you doing down there? What are you doing in this thing?
I just came to get some lunch and sodas and whatnot for the guys.
What? What's your name?
Steve.
Well, Steve, I can't have you driving up and down the street in this Skyjack. You're sitting on beer.
That's for after. I'm not drinking it now.
What about that beer there I saw you drinking coming out of the driveway?
49 dispatch.
Oh, man, I'm just finishing. That one was from earlier. That's...
Steve, I can't have you driving down the road in a Skyjack drinking beer. Why don't you come on down and talk to me here for a minute? Let's figure this out.
Man, I got to get back to work.
No, just come on down. We'll get this figured out, and we'll get you back to work.
No.
Steve, come on down. Steve, come on down.
Come get me. How about that?
I tell you what, Steve, we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way.
Come on up.
The hard way, on the way to jail, we're going to stop by the hospital.
Oh, maybe I'll come down. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll come down.
97.
Maybe I won't.
Steve?
97.
Come get me.
Come on down. Just come on down. Let's work this out. Get you back to work.
Oh, man, why don't you just go on your way and I'll go on my way?
I'm giving you one more chance, Steve. Come on down the easy way.
I know my rights.
All right.
You think he knows his rights? Was he about to get tased out of a Skyjack?
I mean, he might get himself a nice lawsuit after he breaks his neck on the impact afterwards. But
all right, yeah. Steve, you were a cop. You're meeting drunk Steve in a Skyjack driving down the road. How are you handling this situation? I don't know how it ends. I just want you to tell me how it should.
You have to apply some nice verbal judo and then probably get his phone number and be like, hey, bro, I'm about to get off work here in 15 minutes to be 16 time. Let's go hang out. That's probably the most optimal resolution to that, because I certainly don't want to impound a skyjack. It might create a complete incident report that's going to require you to be there for about 8 hours overtime and miss out on hanging out with Steve.
And you're probably going to have to be lampooned at roll call for the next couple of days, because they're going to give you a hard time, and people are going to have like skyjack pictures up on your locker. I can only imagine this only goes one way.
With
Just
a
let him
bad
go.
nickname.
Man, he's just trying to get back to work. Come on now. You always know if someone pronounces their name Steve or Steven, they're probably okay. But if it's Steve, I'm Steve. Well, you know we're about to have some interesting things. Anyway, folks, don't drive drunk, even in a skyjack. Don't do construction drunk, please, if you're building anything I'm going to be in. We don't need that. But I do think that guy probably also says America when the good things happen to him. So there it is. Steve Friend, what do you guys got coming up on AMRAD over the weekend?
We're just going to be talking about, is the horse out of the barn? Some of the decisions that have been made, the policies that have been implemented. Is it too late to course correct for them? We've got some pretty gross examples of that, and we are just on the high of having reached episode 100 yesterday of the American Radicals podcast. So anybody who wants to join us for the next 100, the starting of that, I encourage you to do that at rumble.com/amradpod.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Steve, for being on there. Make sure you've liked our video. Make sure you guys check out the AMRAD podcast on Rumble, or they have a X account as well where you can stream it there. Are you guys doing YouTube yet, or at all? Is there any reason?
I think we'd probably be censored. I mean, it might be worth a try, but no, nothing yet. Just Rumble.
Just Rumble. Get it done. We'll see you again. Thanks for being on with me this weekend, Steve. Appreciate it. Folks, we wrap up the show here saying thanks to my friends over at Patriot Coolers. You guys can get a sweet deal on a sweet tumbler or a cooler, a hard-sided, a soft-sided, a backpack. You take your pick. PatriotCoolers.com. Supports American vets. Supports the Kyle Seraphin Show. Promo code KYLE will save you 10%. If you spend $50 or more, which is any of the big items or a couple of the small ones, you will also get free shipping, which is where I live. I'm a big fan of that. It's hot outside. I used 2 of them yesterday, taking my kids out to the splash pad, and all the ladies that were there that were moms were looking and thinking, what's up with this dad with these really good-looking coolers? I think that's what they were thinking. I can't read their thoughts, but if I could, I imagine that's what they said. PatriotCoolers.com. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code KYLE. Thank you so much. Let me give you my final thought here, because it is worth thinking. I'm telling you, all of this stuff can be boiled down. We saw the other day that there's some real simple-minded people out there in the world. Probably Steve doesn't need a real complicated explanation of why he should be voting one way or another. But if you're having these conversations with independents out there, the simplest question is, do you want 100 days of talk about sexism, racism, and nonsense? Or do you want 4.5 years? Let's break it down to simple brass tacks. If people have to live in a binary world, those are their 2 choices. Pretty straightforward. Let's go out there and have those conversations over the weekend. Don't get too serious. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe. We'll see you again on Monday. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/KyleSeraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at KyleSeraphin.